Hello viewers, Phil here from the Blue Envelope channel. Well, this isn't a video I had planned on making, but that being said, disturbing information has come to my attention about Jehovah's Witnesses, about the Watchtower Society, and specifically about the complexes the Watchtower Society has been building over many decades. Let's start with the oldest complex. They call it Watchtower Farms. It was created in the 1960s by the Society, and since then it has been considerably expanded. Watchtower Farms is located in Wallkill, New York, an hour or two north of New York City. I just want to point out that in New York State, lots of towns end with the word kill. Wallkill, Fishkill, etc. Now, kill is a Dutch word which means a creek or stream. So don't get too fussed about the word kill in the location of this complex. There's more concerning information that we will need to discuss. In the 1990s, the Society built the Watchtower Educational Center in Paterson, New York. Now, just to be clear, we're not talking about the Watchtower Educational Center the Society has in Palm Coast, Florida, between Jacksonville and Orlando. That complex is a different Watchtower Educational Center, and that's better left for another day. The Watchtower Educational Center we're talking about is in upstate New York. It's in the town of Paterson, about 50 miles from Watchtower Farms. In the 2010s, the Society moved its main headquarters out of New York City and built a new headquarters complex in Tuxedo Park, New York. The address is in Tuxedo Park, but the Society typically refers to this complex as being in Warwick, which is a nearby town. I guess they didn't like the connotations the word tuxedo carried. The Tuxedo Park complex is about 50 miles from Watchtower Farms and about 60 miles from Paterson. Now, I want to zoom out and show you the location of these facilities in relation to one another. And you'll notice a very interesting placement. Keep in mind, the Watchtower Society can build its facilities anywhere in New York State. Indeed, anywhere in the entire world. So, why did they pick these three locations? I feel like what they did is create somewhat of a triangular shape. Perhaps one could even say somewhat of a pyramid shape. Perhaps it's just a bit reminiscent of the cover of the first book published by Jehovah's Witnesses, The Divine Plan of the Ages, the first in the series of studies in the Scriptures. It also makes me think just a bit about the memorial marker which commemorates all the early Bethelites who died while working at the Society's first headquarters complex in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That marker also seems to have a bit of a pyramid shape. This memorial marker is right next to the grave of the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, Charles Russell. Oh, by the way, that's a Freemason lodge in the background, right next to the cemetery. The positioning of the Society's complexes also reminds me just a bit of the convention grounds the Society built in Silkeborg, Denmark in 1991. Now, seen from the ground, as in the 1993 yearbook, it looks innocuous enough. But when viewed from the air, the architecture takes on perhaps a more familiar geometry for us. It may recall to your mind one particular symbol which is found on the US $1 bill. Or perhaps it might make you think of this slide from the photo drama of creation the slideshow shown by Jehovah's Witnesses to millions of people in the early 1900s. You'll notice, as we zoom in, the all-seeing eye at the top of the pyramid, just as we find on the $1 bill. So let's zoom in toward the center of this pyramid shape the Watchtower Society has created in New York State. And what we find at the center is the city of Newburgh. Now why, you might ask, has the Society built all of their main complexes seemingly centered around the city of Newburgh? Well, for the answer to that, we have to consider ley lines. Ley lines, spelled L-E-Y, are straight lines which connect various locations of great importance on the earth. Many believe that particularly powerful energy concentrations run along ley lines, and mankind over the millennia has long marked these lines by special monuments. The pyramids of Egypt and Stonehenge, for example, are built on ley lines. The United States is no different in being covered in ley lines, and if we zoom into New York State, we find that a strong ley line runs right through Newburgh, New York. No wonder that the Society chose it as its epicenter. In fact, the Society went well beyond simply surrounding Newburgh with a tetrahedron of important structures. In 2002, they went ahead and built a multi-million-dollar facility centered right in Newburgh itself. Now, I'm not talking about the hotels the Society owns in the city of Newburgh. Those are more recent real estate deals, and better left for another day. Rather, we're talking about the assembly hall they built in the city. Curiously, the facility was struck with disaster even before it was completed. After more than a year of construction, a fire broke out, which heavily damaged the structure. Was the fire, perhaps, sent as a judgment on an organization that would use pyramid symbols and ley lines to guide its efforts? It reminds me a bit of Numbers 11, verse 3 from the Bible, which says, "So that place was given the name Taberah, because a fire from Jehovah had blazed against them." Regardless, the witnesses redoubled their construction efforts, and just 1 month later, the Newburgh Assembly Hall was completed. And so, this is the general arrangement today, with the Watchtower complexes standing in their relative positions. Now, let me turn from geometry and spatial arrangement for a moment to the numbers associated with these locations. Certainly, Jehovah's Witnesses have always valued the meaning in numbers. For example, much early witness literature used the concept of pyramid inches to understand Bible prophecy. A pyramid inch is 1.00106 regular inches. Or how one day, representing 360 days, can be applied to Bible prophecy about 2,520 days, beginning to count in 607 BCE, and using the Metonic cycle of the lunar calendar, which Babylonians invented and Israel adopted, counting 7 cycles of 12 lunar months, although not using the intercalary months both Babylonians and Jews insert, since a lunar calendar is 5 days shorter than an actual solar year, and you arrive at Thursday, October 1st, 1914 AD, as the day Jesus cast Satan and the demons to earth and began ruling in heaven. Well, with such an intense focus on numbers, you can even do things like explain Halloween. As this chart from the Watchtower book, All Scripture is Inspired of God, shows, one can count backwards using Bible chronology to pinpoint when the global flood of Noah's day occurred. It occurred in the year 2370 BCE. In fact, according to the Insight book, we even know the day it happened. How can we be sure that the flood happened at the end of October? As the Reasoning book explains, the entire earth commemorates the day that virtually all humanity died at God's hand. The Day of the Dead, known in the U.S. as Halloween, commemorates all the wicked that died when the flood started October 31st to November 1st. So, in essence, Halloween proves the flood, and the flood explains Halloween. Yes, you can do a lot with numbers. But we don't want to look at dates exactly in this video. We want to know if numbers have been chosen by the Watchtower Society for various reasons. For the Society, many numbers have a hidden meaning. If you look up the entry for number or numeral in the Watchtower Encyclopedia volumes, Insight on the Scriptures, it spends 4 pages discussing what the number 3 means, for example, or the number 8. What do I mean by the Society choosing numbers? Well, the Watchtower Society purchased Watchtower Farms, and so it already existed on an existing road, and it had a street address, which is 800 Red Mills Road. So the Society was stuck with that number. But all the complexes since then have been created from scratch by the Society. And so they've been able to choose not only the name of the road, but the address number of the building. So, what have they picked? First, they built the Watchtower Educational Center, and they picked for its address 100 Watchtower Drive. It's a nice, simple address with a nice round number. The cool thing is, what happens when you subtract 100 from the first existing number, 800, found in the Watchtower Farms address? You end up with 700. And why might the Society like the number 7? Well, the number 6 in the Bible always represents bad things, imperfection. The wild beast of Revelation carries the number 666. What does it mean to have it repeated 3 times? The Insight book tells us the number 6 being emphasized to the 3rd degree, the 6 appearing in the position of units, tens, and hundreds, therefore highlights the imperfection and deficiency of that which the beast represents or pictures. In contrast, the number 7 is beautiful, signifying divine completeness. It is often used in the Bible to represent arrangements Jehovah has set up, like the Sabbath, the Jubilee cycles, and the days of creation. And multiples of 7 just emphasize this divine completeness more firmly. Daniel prophesied about 70 weeks. Jerusalem lay desolate for 70 years. Jesus said we should forgive others not 7 times, but 77 times. So, was it just chance that combining the 2 Watchtower addresses yields a multiple of 7? I will let you decide. In the meantime, let's go on. The third main property is the Warwick headquarters. The address the Society picked is 40 Kings Drive. What is the significance of 40? Well, the Insight book tells us 40 is associated with periods of judgment or punishment. Definitely not the vibe the Society is going for. And when we subtract the Warwick number from the Patterson number, that is 100 minus 40, we end up with 60. Again, not a great number. So, on its own, it's not immediately obvious why they picked the number 40. One thing I will say about the address 40 Kings Drive, there are 8 governing body members, and there are 31 governing body helpers, a total of 39 kings right now. What will happen when they add one more, and then they all go for a drive? One can only imagine. However, what we need to keep in mind is that the Newburgh Assembly Hall was already built when Warwick was constructed. So what is the address there? The Society chose 23 Unity Place. Subtracting the Newburgh number, 23, from the Warwick number, 40, we get 17. And recall that the Warwick number, 40, subtracted from the Patterson number of 100 gives us 60. And when we combine 60 and 17, what do we end up with? 77. 7 to the second degree. And that is a very fine number indeed for the Society. Now it begins to make sense why Warwick's number is 40. But we can go further. When the Newburgh number, 23, is subtracted from the very first number, Wallkill's 800, what is the result? 777. 7 to the third degree. Incidentally, the goal of all Freemasons is to become a third degree Master Mason. As we saw from the Insight book, a number to the third degree powerfully emphasizes that number's qualities, and the number 7 signifies completeness. I think we can now start to link why they wanted the number 777 associated with the assembly hall they put on a street named Unity Place. The goal of the Jehovah's Witness organization, as any witness could tell you, is complete world unification. It will begin at the pyramid's epicenter in Newburgh and expand out in all directions until unification has been completed, fully completed, to the third degree. A 66 Watchtower, speaking about Jehovah's Witnesses, says, "They will enjoy the fine privilege of seeing Satan's complete organization on earth and all wickedness destroyed off of it, and the dawning of a righteous new day in which a new world order under the peaceful kingdom of Christ will be ushered in to rule everlastingly." A 1973 Awake magazine said, "The world is heading with accelerating speed toward collision, a collision that soon will utterly wreck the present world order. Yet there will be survivors of that collision, and these will take up life in a new world order." A 1995 Awake magazine proudly quoted a newspaper article about a Jehovah's Witness convention. It states, "The paper then added, if the present world order really is about to break down, the witnesses at Twickenham seem well prepared to organize the new one." In this new world order, they will use a special Bible which they have already prepared, the New World Translation. They will indeed be the New World Society in action. Curiously, that was the exact title of a movie about Jehovah's Witnesses, which the Society released way back in 1954 and re-released for an entire new generation in 1995. The New World Order is coming, if Jehovah's Witnesses have anything to say about it. In 1975, the Society built a Kingdom Hall in the small town of Elberton, Georgia, near the South Carolina border. Curiously, When all the numbers in that Kingdom Hall's phone number are added together, it gives us 49. 49 is 7 raised to the second power, 7 times 7. Reading through the glowing reviews of the hall, which interestingly have an average rating of 4.9, we find that the majority of them have been written by local guides. Each of these guides enthusiastically recommends visiting the hall. As one guide, Stephanie Rhodes, says, "It is where the truth can be found." 5 years after the hall was constructed, a mysterious monument was erected nearby in Elberton. It is known as the Georgia Guidestones. They were unveiled on March 22, 1980. The organization which created the Guidestones is unknown. We know only the pseudonym of the man who hired the granite company, Robert Christian. Known at times as the American Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones are a massive structure built from over 100 tons of granite. 4 20-foot-tall slabs stand around a central stone, and a capstone links them all. The monument is oriented astronomically. The outer stones mark the lunar declination cycle. A slot carved through the central pillar is aligned with solar equinoxes and solstices. On each side of the 4 main slabs are 10 guidelines, written in a total of 8 different languages. They appear to be principles to guide humans who are rebuilding after civilization has been devastated by a global cataclysm. Many of the guidelines are classic goals of humanity. One says to prize truth, beauty, and love. Another recommends having a world court to decide the disputes of nations. It recommends that mankind be united with a living new language. Perhaps the most troubling guideline is the first one, which says, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. There are currently about 7.5 billion humans on Earth. To get down to 500 million, 93% of humanity would need to be killed. However, the 93% death toll is actually not as bad as what the Society has published in the Watchtower magazine. In an article titled, "What Will Armageddon Mean for You?" a 1958 Watchtower put the figure in line for death at 99.9% of all humans. The article goes on to say, Armageddon will be the worst thing ever to hit this earth in the history of man. It will be marked by shocking surprise, consternation, fright, collapse of government, tremendous upheavals of earth, landslides, cloudbursts, overflowing flash floods, rain of corrosive liquid fire, and terror in the air, on land, and in the sea. No wonder that the slain of Jehovah shall be at that day from one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth. They shall not be lamented, neither gathered, nor buried. They shall be dung upon the face of the ground. When the Watchtower refers to a rain of corrosive liquid fire being used to help complete the depopulation, to what are they referring? Of course, it is entirely possible that they are speaking about a supernatural or magical phenomenon outside the realm of known scientific principles. However, everything else in the sentence is an actual physical process. So, what may they have had in mind when using this phrase, a rain of corrosive liquid fire? Well, just 15 years earlier, scientists at Harvard University had invented a new substance which quickly began to be used during World War II. The scientists called it napalm, a name which is a combination of two of its ingredients, naphthenic acid and palmitic acid. It is a highly flammable, liquidy gel which can be deployed in a stream against a target, whether the target be foliage, buildings, or people. The life story of Harley Miller, published in the 1983 Watchtower, is of note. Harley Miller was the overseer of the entire service department at Bethel for decades, personally appointed by Nathan Knorr, the Society's president. However, prior to becoming a witness, he was a chief petty officer in the Navy during World War II and flew countless bombing runs against the Japanese Army. It is interesting to note the terminology he uses when talking about using napalm during the battle to take Iwo Jima. He says, regarding the Japanese forces, they had buried themselves for protection in the coral rocks all along the shore, which made it almost impossible to pry them out. There was only one sure way: fly in low and saturate the cliffs with deadly napalm bombs. When they hit, their liquid fire ran into the cracks and crevices, turning it into a burning inferno. Napalm was heavily used by the U.S. during the Vietnam War. In 1980, a United Nations convention banned using napalm against civilian populations. However, for 99.9% of humanity to be killed off, it is understandable that, from the Watchtower Society's point of view, napalm will need to be deployed against military and civilians alike, both children and adults, for the Society's goals to be accomplished. The Society pointed out in its book, You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth, in an illustration which always worried me a bit as a child, with good reason, a parent will permit a beloved child to undergo a painful operation. Yes, at times, sacrifices must be made to make a better world, a world without sin. It's all about the greater good. As the article says, the dead families shall not be lamented by the survivors, who will be Jehovah's Witnesses. To many witnesses, the idea of participating in such actions would initially be quite objectionable. However, as the Insight book points out, while the Bible says Jehovah occasionally stepped in to provide supernatural victories when Israel was conquering the Promised Land, primarily the Israelites themselves served as God's executioner. As the paragraph says, Jehovah assigned the Israelites the sacred duty of serving as his executioners in the Promised Land to which he brought them. Prior to Israel's deliverance from Egypt, the nation had not known warfare. It finishes, it also gave the Israelites the opportunity to demonstrate obedience to God's commandments, to the point of endangering their lives in God-ordained warfare. How did individual Israelites know this was what God wanted them to do? The human leaders of the organization told them that was God's direction. They said participating in this extermination was what Jehovah was asking back from each person. Could Israelites opt out of some of what the organization told them to do? The account of Achan indicates that would not be a wise idea. Hence, it is now more understandable why in the November 15, 2013 Watchtower, witnesses were instructed that all of us must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not. Interestingly, the March 22, 1980 Awake, the exact date the Georgia Guidestones were unveiled, had several articles which gave its readers advice on how to care for accidental burns. One is titled, I Was a Burn Victim, and second, What to Do for Burns. It is also notable that Almost since its inception, Watchtower Farms has had its own private fire department. The equipment has been upgraded over the years in order to handle any society projects which may go awry. Other major branch offices of the society are similarly equipped. When the society was choosing a location for the new headquarters facility, sites which could offer a ready water supply were very appealing. The site eventually selected in Tuxedo Park is located at the edge of Sterling Forest Lake, also known as Blue Lake. Extensive modifications to the lake were made, both above the water's surface and underwater by scuba divers, so that abundant water flow is available should it be needed if there is a mishap. If one were at the Elberton Kingdom Hall and wanted to visit the Guidestones, is it difficult to get there? Not at all. It's only a 15-minute drive. You just need to go right up State Highway 77. Yes, Route 77 will take you right to them. In 1961, President Dwight D. Eisenhower left office after serving 2 terms as president. He is the only president to date who grew up raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, or Bible students as they were known in those years. Up past the time he left to attend West Point in 1911, his parents were staunch worshipers of Jehovah. Their home was the local center of the religion, and it's where all the meetings were held. The Eisenhower living room had a 6-foot by 10-foot poster prominently hanging on the living room wall. It was a poster which the society commonly sold to Bible student groups in those days. The poster explained with many diagrams and calculations how passageways in the pyramids aligned with Bible prophecies. And so, knowing that background, that Eisenhower grew up surrounded by worshipers of Jehovah, the subject Eisenhower chose for his final speech as president is extremely interesting. He didn't dwell on his many accomplishments as a 5-star general in World War II, or later as president during the start of the Cold War. Instead, he used his last speech to sound an alarm to the American people. He warned that only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry could successfully combat the threat he saw growing ever more powerful.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration. To meet it successfully, there is call for not so much the emotional and transitory sacrifices of crisis, but rather those which enable us to carry forward steadily, surely, and without complaint, the burdens of a prolonged and complex struggle with liberty, the stake. Only thus shall we remain, despite every provocation, on our charted course toward permanent peace and human betterment. Thank you, and good night.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.